boxer, actor, author, journalist, prime minister? Now that's a pretty impressive resume, which as of July 1st, 2022, belongs to Israel's 14th prime minister, Yair Lapid. He's an interesting character for sure. But what does his appointment mean for Israel and the rest of the world? In this video, we'll take a deep dive into Lapid's past, his rise to power, and his outlook for the future. As with all our episodes in this series, we'll break it down into 3 unique sections, like Neapolitan Ice Cream, the vanilla, the who, what, where, and one of the folks that changed the world, chocolate, that flavor punch. Controversy and adversity make lives so interesting. And the strawberry, the lasting legacy and lick that all Neapolitan lives come with. If you're interested in other videos like this, or different in-depth looks at essential people throughout history, then make sure you're subscribed to the channel with post notifications on, so you never miss a single one. Without further ado, let's get into it. Vanilla. On November 5th, 1963, Yair Lapid was born into a prominent family in Tel Aviv, Israel. His father, Yosef Tommy Lapid, was a Serbian-born survivor of the Holocaust who immigrated to Israel and enjoyed a distinguished and varied career in both entertainment and politics. Yosef was in fact a journalist who later became CEO of the Israel Broadcasting Authority, before serving as Minister of Justice and Deputy Prime Minister in the Israeli government. Meanwhile, Yair's mother, Shulamit Lapid, is a celebrated novelist, playwright, and former chair of the Hebrew Writers Association. Yair's grandparents were also heavily involved in politics and media. His maternal grandfather, David Galati, was a writer and journalist too. He helped to establish the Hebrew language newspaper called Mariv. Yair's paternal grandfather, Bela Lempel, was a lawyer and Zionist activist who was murdered in Mauthausen concentration camp during the Second World War, while his great-grandmother, Hermione Lempel, was also killed in a gas chamber in Auschwitz. While growing up in Tel Aviv, Lapid and his family lived in a building known as the Journalist Residence, since so many well-known journalists live there. He dropped out of high school due to learning disabilities, without earning his Bagrut certificate, the equivalent of a high school diploma and a prerequisite for higher education in Israel. This would become a point of controversy later, but we'll get to that. When it came time for Lapid to undertake his mandatory military service, he spent most of it as a correspondent for the Israel Defense Forces weekly newspaper called Bamahane, meaning in the base camp. Differing accounts by Yair himself suggest that he had either served in the Armored Corps or the Israeli Air Defense Command before he was pulled out after suffering an asthma attack, caused by either dust and haze or a smoke grenade. Apparently, he reached the rank of first sergeant. Following in his grandfather's footsteps, Yair worked for the Mariv newspaper after completing his military duties and also wrote poetry that was published in literary journals. For sport, the Israeli tried his hand at boxing and enjoyed a brief career as an amateur boxer. Footage of him being smacked around in a Thai boxing match shows why he likely didn't decide to turn professional. Still, Lapid was successful at many of the arts. He became a best-selling author, and a talent for acting combined with his good looks brought him national fame as a TV presenter, film actor, and musician. Among his numerous accomplishments are 12 best-selling books, a newspaper column that was the most widely read in Israel, several awards for TV programs he presented, achieving the highest national ratings for the news show he anchored, and having hit records reach the top of the Israeli music charts. By September 2013, Israel's version of Forbes magazine estimated Yair Lapid's wealth at 22 million shekels, which equates to around $6.5 million today. Lapid used his influence for good by supporting organizations such as the Association for Assistance to People with Special Needs, the Association for Children at Risk for Children with Autism, and the Youth Renewal Fund for young people with disabilities, as well as teaching citizenship at a school in Jaffa. His fame and personality won him many supporters. So in 2012, when he decided to enter politics and founded the Yesh Atid party, it gathered a strong following. Still, nobody quite expected it to grow into the second largest party in the Knesset by 2013. The Knesset is the term used for Israel's Assembly of Government. A centrist Zionist liberal party, Yesh Atid focused on fighting corruption within the political system and aimed to find a peaceful middle ground between the Jewish and democratic values of Israel, while standing up for women's rights and the rights of the LGBTQ+ community and ethnic minority groups. During Israel's conflict with Gaza in 2014, Lapid served as the member of the Security Cabinet as part of Operation Protective Edge. Lapid had risen to become Minister of Finance by that time and would later serve as Minister of Foreign Affairs. In 2021, Lapid was tasked with forming a new government, and in less than a month, he announced to President Reuven Rivlin that he had successfully formed a coalition. Within 2 weeks of that announcement, Lapid was sworn in as alternate prime minister. When Naftali Bennett stepped down as prime minister in 2022, Yair Lapid stepped up to fill the void until the next election takes place. At the time of this, Yair Lapid is the prime minister of the State of Israel and minister of foreign affairs in Israel's 36th government. He is still also the chairperson of the Yesh Atid. Chocolate. Although he has not yet been in his prime ministerial position for long, Yair Lapid has enjoyed a lengthy amount of time in the national spotlight, and as such, he is no stranger to controversy. Back in 2012, Lapid was admitted into a doctorate program at Bar Ilan University. However, as we stated earlier, he had not completed his high school studies, and his lack of a Bagrut certificate was against the rules. He had supposedly been allowed in due to his extra academic credentials and career in journalism and writing. An investigation was launched by the Knesset, and the Council for Higher Education ended up canceling the program through which Lapid had been admitted. On his official Knesset page, it states that Yair studied towards an M.A. in Hermeneutics and Culture Studies. In case you were wondering, like we were, what hermeneutics is, it's a branch of knowledge that deals with interpretation, especially of the Bible of literary texts. This would not be the only time that Yair's pre-political career would come back to haunt him, though. As a TV news anchor during an interview with Benjamin Netanyahu, who was head of the Treasury at the time, Lapid announced that, "I don't know anything about economics." That's not exactly the kind of thing you want to hear from your prime minister, even if it was before he entered politics. Speaking of which, Yair's decision to become a politician was in response to protests that happened in 2011. The forming of his party, Yesh Atid, which translates as "there is a future," promised to fight corruption and to tackle bread and butter middle-class issues. Lapid has frequently locked horns with Israel's longest-serving leader, the same Benjamin Netanyahu from that disastrous economics interview. When Netanyahu was on trial facing corruption charges, Lapid appeared as a witness against him and pledged to fight against the forces threatening to turn Israel into a non-democratic country. Yair Lapid's present role as PM is temporary, a sort of caretaker job, and he will have to prove that he deserves the job long-term by winning in the next election. This is not so straightforward in turbulent times, and in a country that has gone to the polls 5 times in less than 4 years. His determination to make drastic changes, even as an interim prime minister, is sure to draw both fans and critics. His party's coalition has already failed after reports of infighting and losing its slim majority, but Lapid remains headstrong and has already announced his views on hot topics for Israel, such as high living costs and security threats in the Gaza Strip, Lebanon, and Iran. In 2013, he found favor among secular Israelis by focusing on these issues, although the ultra-Orthodox Jews in the country were not too happy when Yair talked about getting rid of their exemptions from military service. As for Israel's long-lasting conflict with the Palestinians, Lapid has expressed his desire to commit to a 2-state solution. His approach is likely to be less extreme than previous leaders, but he does remain unwilling to compromise in certain areas. For example, he has made clear that Jerusalem should remain in the undivided capital of Israel, dismissing Palestinian claims to the east of the city by describing them as totally bogus and with no historical roots. Lapid's perennial opponent, Benjamin Netanyahu, is much stronger in terms of his stance on security, though, painting Lapid as weak when it comes to issues like Iran and terrorism. Lapid has also been presented as a privileged member of the elite, and will have to overcome this perception while finding a difficult balance between protecting Israel and promoting domestic unity. And to think he could have carried on living the easy life by writing books and making movies. Strawberry. Despite his unpopularity with the ultra-Orthodox parties, Yair Lapid has proven that he is able to build alliances to the benefit of his country. While serving as Minister of Foreign Affairs, the talented Israeli founded and hosted the very first Negev Summit, a meeting of foreign ministers from the United Arab Emirates, Bahrain, Morocco, and Egypt, as well as the United States Secretary of State. The purpose of the summit, which is now planned to be held annually, was to show a united front against Iran's nuclear program and the perceived aggressive actions of Iran in the Middle East. Lapid has repeatedly spoken up about the need for regional stability and seems capable of bringing countries together to promote peace. It is no coincidence that Lapid was the first Israeli official to visit the United Arab Emirates, where he inaugurated Israel's embassy in Abu Dhabi when he was Minister of Foreign Affairs. He also opened the Israeli embassies in Rabat, Morocco, and in Manama, Bahrain. In 2013, Lapid was included in Time magazine's list of the 100 most influential people in the world and Foreign Policy's 100 leading global thinkers. That same year, he also came to the top of most influential Jews in the world, the list produced by the Jerusalem Post. There have been a number of key achievements while Lapid has been in office. The government of Israel included an Arab Islamist party for the first time, receiving praise on the international scale for its inclusivity at a time when political tribalism is rife. Israel managed to pass its first budget in more than 3 years, and they significantly improved relations with Arab allies and Washington. Israel also performed admirably in its efforts to combat the coronavirus, placing a respectable 16th on Bloomberg's COVID resilience ranking as of June 2022. Despite these successes, Lapid knows he still faces an uphill battle if he's to stay in power, and he must surprise everyone again in order to be re-elected. If his life up until now is anything to go by, though, he has certainly got the drive and willpower to pull it off. In trying to do what is best for his country, Lapid once said, "What is good for Israel is not in the possession of the right, nor is it in the possession of the left. It lies in the possibility of creating here a real and decent center that listens to the other, that knows how to engage in dialogue, that remembers that we are here together, not one at the expense of one another, but one with the other." That inspiring message of unity seems to be a cause worth fighting for, although you can never fully trust a politician, especially one who used to be an actor. Then again, as former actor and ex-president of the United States, Ronald Reagan once said, "How can a president not be an actor?" If you enjoyed this video, let us know by leaving a like. Tell us in the comments if there's anything you think we missed or who you'd like to see us cover in the future. For more fascinating insights into historical figures like this one, check out the other episodes on our channel. Until next time, this has been Neapolitan, and we'll see you around.